Hi guys, and Merry Christmas, because it is actually Christmas. And I've gotten some very nice Christmas presents this year. First and foremost, I hit 100 subscribers, which felt really nice. And on top of that, the channel's total view count is now at 10,000. It happened as I was sleeping. Can't really beat Christmas presents like those, can I? Well, I did get a very nice ping pong racket from my girlfriend as well, which it's all, I go between the two. It's a very nice racket. I'm sorry guys, it's very nice. Anywho, let's get into it. So today we are going to talk about structured logging. So let's define that first and foremost. What is structured logging? Well, structured logging and logging in general is the idea basically, if you haven't been working in software development, you may not know why this is important. But the thing is that when you're creating software, as you probably, let's take a junior developer, for example. Whenever you write a program of any kind, what you usually do is that, you sit and you write the code, and then you look through it, and then you kind of, in your head, you see what the execution of the program is going to do. But what generally happens is that something goes wrong, or something's happening in a certain order, and when you debug things, what you basically do is you run the program just to verify what the state of things are. And that's where logging comes in, and it's very useful that you can actually basically print state, like different function calls to the different logs, and they will output some information like info logs, warning logs, debugging logs, error logs. There's all kinds of logging. And you may ask, why is this important? Well, the thing is that when you're just running your own little system, it's very easy for you to just run the program and try it again. But when you're running something in production and you have people using it, you can't really do that. And what's even worse is that you may not actually know what's happening. Logging is, in general, I will say that a lot of people underestimate how important good logging is, because not only is it the only way that you can actually track what's happening in your production system, it's the best way for you to understand what's coming in and leaving your system. My personal philosophy is that I try to put a log statement for every database access I do, and for everything I'm pushing to a database, or for any integration, anything that goes in or comes in or goes out of the code base that I'm writing, I log in general, because it's if you know what the input and what the output is, you can just read the logic in, you have the source code for everything else. You can kind of reason about what's happening. Now, structured logging is a little bit different. It used to be the case that you had a single server running on some box somewhere on the internet, and you would simply log out, when somebody's making a request to your system, or for whatever it is that you're interested in knowing about your system. But with Docker, Kubernetes, and the rise of microservices and distributed systems, they had this before as well. Let's just say that you introduce a very different type of problem, because when you have a single server or a single instance, or maybe two applications running, you can just output the information. But structured logging is the idea that you have to output a log format that gives you information not only about what's going on in the system, but the host, like what container are you running on, things of that nature. And ideally, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky, you want to be able to trace the client making the request. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Think about it this way. In a modern application, I can give you an example from work. We had a little bit of a critical issue a few months back when we released a new flagship feature. And in essence, what we needed was there was a problem in production basically, and we needed to debug the issue as quickly as humanly possible. The problem was that, in a distributed system where you have a lot of instances, and when you're using Docker and Kubernetes, you don't have a single server. You have tons of them, and they do the same. Some of them do the same thing. You may have several instances of the same application container, that creates a problem because we didn't have proper structured logging, which meant that in order for us to, we had a test user, like on our developers was trying to interact with the system in such a way that we could debug the issue we had. Problem is that when you don't have a structured logging system that makes sure that we trace his interaction, in this case, on the system, it's very tricky for us to figure out what's actually going on, because when he makes the first request to the server, he might hit container 1, and then he hits container 2, and then 4, and then we have absolutely no way to trace who he is in our distributed system, or where all of his information is going, and like where he's getting his responses. Because when we have hundreds, there's thousands of people making requests all the time, so you can imagine that you can't just sit and zip through the logs. I mean, they're generating logs at several, between 10 and 100 lines of log output almost every, between a second and a minute. So the system is being bombarded by different requests. And with structured logging, the idea is that you have traceability, so that you actually assign a value, like an identifier to a single client. It can be an IP address or something like that, just something that allows you to trace a single person and that person's that client's interactions across your system. Now, I know that this is a boring topic, and I'm sorry for that, but I need to tell you this because you have no idea how much money you're going to waste if you don't have something like this in a distributed system. You trust me, you have to have it. It's very important, because it took us forever. Just for reference, when this issue came, we didn't have it. We spent I don't know how many man hours trying to debug it. All development stopped just to trace down this problem, because we had, the scope of the problem is so big. And as soon as we fixed the issue, the day after, we had a meeting saying, all right, we're going to have structured logging, and now we're overhauling our entire logging strategy. That's how important it is. So trust me, I cannot stress this enough. One of the most important things for having a good production environment is to take logging seriously, because just trust me, when things go bad, you want logs, because it's the only way, especially the structured logs for a distributed system. You don't have to have structured logging if you have a single server, but if you have a Kubernetes setup or something like that, you really want that. And so take it seriously, because when something goes wrong or you want to figure out what's happening in your system, logs are the best way to figure that out. Hope this was useful to you.